Greetings, YouTube. Have you ever heard the phrase not even wrong? It's a reference to a situation where someone has such a lack of understanding about something that they haven't even gotten to wrong. They have that little understanding of what's going on in the world or that particular topic at hand. Um, and I often feel like that when it comes to the world at large. Why? Because I have executive dysfunction issues and I'm autistic. And one of the things that I've always found frustrating is so much of the world around me is so simple for other people to grasp. And they all tend to have this attitude of, well, everybody understands that, but they don't. They seem to think that there is this pool of communal knowledge, of species memory that everyone can just tap into whenever they want to. And they will spontaneously know whatever it is they need to know. It's often an example of supreme arrogance because not only is it something that is alienating to folks who are autistic, but it can also be extremely alienating to people who are from other cultures. Now, when you visit a culture or someone comes to your culture for the first time, there is something that we often refer to as culture shock. The person is really surprised that the place they find themselves in is so fundamentally different than where they're from, that they had not prepared themselves for how many differences there would be and how fundamental they were. They go all the way down. It isn't superficial stuff on the surface. No, no, no. These are things that you find yourself questioning, like, how could you do this? Because you could not conceive that anyone else would live in a way that you haven't been raised at. So it is a degree of arrogance and entitlement, but it's confusion because you didn't understand the other culture that you now find yourself exposed to. And if you spend a long time in that alien culture, you will eventually come to understand it and assimilate to it. At least I hope so. And come to understand how there are probably more similarities than differences, but it's those differences that were so glaringly obvious to you when you showed up or they showed up here. Okay? For me, it's always culture shock because there are so many things I don't get. There are so many assumptions that people make around me, and I know that there are my folks out there who are fellow autistics who also understand this, also experience it. So many people just kind of assume that you know this stuff, but no one ever tells it to you. You're supposed to have learned it along the way. Now, part of the problem is that most modern parents in Western culture don't know how to raise an autistic kid. They have a weird kid who doesn't seem to see the world quite the same way. Well, yeah, the kid's not just weird. The kid is unable to grasp things that you find completely understandable, and you don't know how to help them to overcome that. You don't know how to help them assimilate or have an understanding or accept the fact that there's nothing wrong with being autistic. They don't have to change themselves, but you have to help them understand how the world works so they can do it safely and they can do it so they don't feel like they are broken. Because when you grow up never understanding anything, always feeling like you are living in this perpetual state of, well, everybody knows that when you in fact do not, that can have a somewhat deleterious effect upon your ego and your self-worth. Because if you are shown every single day that you don't understand, that is not going to do good things for you. Whereas if you have been raised to understand that you are different, but you are still worthy of human rights and civil liberties, that's a different thing. Someone that's born without a limb can be made the scapegoat, can be raised through abuse and discrimination and prejudice, or they can be raised to understand that they're different, but they are still equal. Just because they don't have the requisite number of digits and limbs doesn't mean they are lesser. And the same thing goes for those of us who are neurodivergent. Just because we are this way Doesn't mean that we should be treated like we are some kind of outside thing, some alien from another world. And if we don't grasp the stuff that everybody knows, it's okay. Take the time to explain it, because along the way, you may discover that you will unravel some of your own entitlement, that you will come to understand that maybe these things that I've always accepted, these unwritten rules, maybe they shouldn't be written at all, because there's no rule in the world harder to change than an unwritten rule. So if you define that by helping someone else understand that maybe both of you can end up at a better place. You realizing that, maybe these unwritten rules, or at least some of them, are bullshit. And the person you're helping to come to understand that it's okay you don't get it. You could have greater understanding. You may never understand it to the same degree as everybody else does. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't mean you should be treated like you're not worth a dime.